Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to our parallel session. We'll be following the same format as this morning. Each speaker gonna have a 30-minute window, and we'll wrap up this session with a dedicated Q&A session. Our next hour and a half, we're diving into innovation and project management track. To kick off things, I'm thrilled to welcome our first group of expertise, Asma Al-Haddabi, Ikram Al-Tanfouri, and Lorinda Kazoka. Please give them a warm welcome.
Hello. So, good afternoon, everyone. We are very happy to be here with you today. And we are thrilled to share a story about transformation and collaboration in the heart of the Middle East energy sector. So, join us in welcoming again Asma Al-Haddabi, VP, Technology Strategy Planning and Portfolio Management from ADNOC, along with Ikram Tanfouri, Project Director at Planisware. Let's start. I have the first question for you, Asma. First of all, thank you again for joining us. And can you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit more about your role and about your career. What led you to lead strategy and portfolio management at ADNOC?
Thank you, Loredana. My name is Asma Al-Haddabi. My journey in ADNOC started about 11 years ago as an electrical engineer, in fact. I was working in Habshan field for about 4 years. And then my roles evolved into more managerial positions, strategy, and including governance as well, supported by my MBA. I would say the common thread among all the roles that I've taken in ADNOC is project management, whether it's managing a construction field as a green field in the sites, or capital projects, or even human capital excellence programs across ADNOC. And today, actually, in technology, as I manage portfolio and planning of technology.
Thank you. Now, Ikram, can you also introduce yourself and tell us what do you do at Planisware?
Sure. Thank you, Loredana. And thank you, everyone, for being here today. I'm really happy and honored to be Dubai International Project Management Forum to share with you some of my journey working with ADNOC. I started with Planisware back in 2020, first as a consultant. And back then, I was working with a lot of life science customer. And it is kind of ironic because it was during COVID, a time where pharmaceutical companies were racing to find a vaccine. And that made me realize that our work is really connected to something larger. Then my growth with Planisware was fast, meaningful, so I passed from one role to another. And today I am a project director with Planisware, leading teams that work, supporting different teams or divisions from ADNOC, from the efficiency programs to ADNOC technology and other instances. So today I'm really happy and proud to be contributing to such a national asset of the UAE. Thank you.
Well, thanks. Thanks, Ikram. And mostly for the audience who might not know ADNOC in detail, if there are any, Ikram, I have a question for you. Could you please tell me what are ADNOC's main mission and strategic priorities, but especially around innovation, research and development, and technology, of course?
Sure, Loredana. As I think most people here knows ADNOC, founded in 1971, ADNOC is a diversified energy company with a very clear mission. Our mission is to responsibly deliver energy to the nation, and we do that by accelerating the agenda of clean energy that we produce by being the lowest carbon intensity producer in the world. And talking about technology, R&D specifically, and innovation, they go hand in hand, and they're on the core of our strategy. As you can see, ADNOC continues aggressively to invest in digital solutions and AI. Again, this is all part of our being responsible agenda to the community and to the world.
Thanks. Thank you. I understand. And Ikram, in your role, please tell the audience, what does a typical interaction with a customer like ADNOC looks like?
Oh, typical interaction. I don't think that exists with a customer like ADNOC, to be honest. Everything is very dynamic, and things need to move fast, if not instantly sometimes. So my role is basically to ensure that the strategic partnership that we have with ADNOC is there. So it's beyond just delivering. It's also ensuring that we are there to advise. And we do that through basically, for example, framing the business goals, making sure that the business is there beyond the tools. First, the business need and the business goals are achieved beyond the tool itself. Then, in a company working with an organization like ADNOC, you have multiple stakeholders. And you sometimes for one topic, we will have different teams working with them in ADNOC and also from Planisware side. So we kind of work like the bridge between all of those different teams. And then we also work as a translator. So we translate business language to Planisware configuration. And then we also work as a gatekeeper. So we're there to identify risks, make sure the milestones are respected, make sure we are delivering, make sure also that the timeline is there, and we are not compromising the compliance or the quality. And of course, we are there for the future. So for the continuous improvement, we identify what could we do better in the system, what we can specially leverage from our tool, and we advise ADNOC or our customer on how they can work with a PPM tool, also following the best practices.
Thank you. Thank you for this complete answer. And for your great introductions, I have a question to you, Asma. How is ADNOC's technology portfolio actually structured? And more in detail, roughly, what kind of volume are you overseeing today?
Okay, so I will talk about technology portfolio specifically. Our portfolio is structured in a way that captures the full life cycle of our technology R&Ds. Basically starting from initiation stage, moving to contract development and signing off, then moving to monitoring and the execution of these R&Ds. We also utilize Planisware platform to manage our IP portfolio. And as we have a record of all our inventions in ADNOC, and we manage the submission up to evaluation, securing the IP rights, etc.
Okay.
In addition to that, we also utilize Planisware to issue automated report for visibility to our management, so we capture key highlights. And I think this current structure is giving us end-to-end visibility.
Thank you. This was an answer about the present, and now I'd like to know about the past, actually. Yeah. So how are you managing this portfolio, and why did you feel a change was necessary?
Well, before Planisware, we were doing the typical project management that everyone knows. Our processes were manual. Our data and information, it's spreaded around Excel sheets, our emails, or even some papers on our desks, right? We needed, that approach did work for some time. Yeah. But as our portfolio grew, as ADNOC, as we move forward, ADNOC is investing more in R&Ds, and it became a necessity, actually. And since I joined the team, I strongly recommended and led this transformation from paperwork, Excel files, etc., to having a single source of truth. And we found Planisware team. We were collaborating with Planisware, and alhamdulillah, so far it's working so well to meet our expectations.
Thank you. I see, and I have a question for you, Ikram. From the Planisware side, can you also share, so what made Planisware actually the right choice for ADNOC's needs?
Sure. I would say, just like ADNOC, Planisware has a vision. So we are aligned on the strategic partnership that we are creating together. And an organization like ADNOC, at its scale, needed a platform that could provide that level of scalability. At portfolio level, I remember with Asma before, there was, before at Planisware, when senior management asks for reports, they will have it eventually, but maybe spend 2 weeks or more to get those reports. Today, it's real time. It's real time. And this is not just gathering data and have it in the system. This is accurate data. We have all the team pushed to be in the software, using the system, making sure also the data flows through the different integrations, and also ensuring that we are reporting correctly to the different system, the KPIs, et cetera, et cetera. So I would say, yeah, it's a perfect match.
Nice. And I'm getting a bit more curious because this seems to be a perfect match between Planisware and ADNOC. So speaking about scalability, I'm sure you know that integration is always a big topic, especially for a company like ADNOC's size. What systems did you already depend on? And what requirements did you set for this new platform?
Integration, when we talk about integration, it is a key requirement even before Planisware. It was on the top of our agenda. And even before Planisware, we in ADNOC are dealing with different systems across the company. We have a big company with many operating companies underneath it. And we use different systems, such as we have SAP for financials, for example. We have our audit system. We have our value monitoring and tracking system called RVT tool. And what happened with Planisware, or the beauty of Planisware, is that we can integrate it with any system that we have. It doesn't, it's compatible with any system. And that did really help us to connect it to our existing systems. And so far, it did really work with any system that we have. For example, now all our financials data and all our audit updates are seamlessly reflected in Planisware report with a click of a button without manual intervention, which really helped us a lot in terms of efficiency. And beyond integration, we are having many use cases and maybe items on our agenda to integrate further in 2026.
Thank you. And we also have many anecdotes about it, and we will discuss about it a bit later. But now I would like us to talk again about the past and to go back to the start of the collaboration and discuss about the implementation of Planisware that happened in 2021, actually. So, Asma, how did you and your team prepare for this rollout?
Well, starting off or kicking it off, we did not jump into the integration directly or the software itself. We started with reviewing our internal processes along with our Planisware team. We've joined with Ikram's teams. We're meeting on weekly basis, reviewing our processes, enhancing it, and agreeing on how do we transform these processes into a system. Now, as we speak, we have already transformed most of our processes, and I'm very proud being probably the first PMOs within ADNOC that have all their processes automated with no paperwork on the side.
Wow. Ikram, from the Planisware's expertise side, is there anything that you would like to add?
I think I would say collaboration was the key. Because when you work and implementing a new software, first thing that you need to find is some sort of a support system. The people that you identify as the focal points, they are going to act as your support system throughout the implementation, to the execution, to after for the continuous. So That's what Asma and our team did, is identify on both teams people we can build this kind of system with them and this kind of trust. And they helped a lot throughout the sessions, throughout the user adoption, and I think that would made it really seamless.
Yes, you finished with an important word, user adoption. So thank you. And how did you ensure successful user adoption, Asma?
Well, from our side, we made sure that we conduct training sessions. We did lots of awareness sessions and demos to our team. And as of today, as we speak, we have more than 300 active users within group technology, within the technology function itself, and I'm sure you have the numbers beyond that. Training continues to be part of our agenda as we go on, because whenever we publish or we roll out a new process, automated process, we always in parallel seek a continuous improvement on the side. So that's why we continue to conduct updates on awareness sessions.
Thank you very much. I have a couple of more questions. One about the resistance. I'm sure people here in the audience can relate that resistance is actually difficult. So a key action to find a way to transform resistance into interest is actually to find the benefits of using the tool. And Asma, how do your users live in your system today? And what a typical journey looks like from idea to project closeout with Planisware?
Well, I'll try to give a very brief summary of how our system works. A typical user will log into the system to their homepage, and they can plug in ideas. So we start with the ideation stage. Users or project managers across ADNOC technology, they can log in their ideas, and typically a life cycle for an idea is either to be re-evaluated, killed, or move it to the next stage. Okay. And if it's approved and moved to the next stage, which is project initiation, that will be including risk assessments, technical evaluations, checking the integrity of our partners, because in group technology we do R&Ds, and usually these are all newcomers to the market, have new ideas, something different to present to ADNOC, so we try to encourage this kind of collaboration. Once that is approved and the project moves to the contracting stage. Contracting stage, we develop the contract, get it signed off by management, etc., so we can kick off the project. Then it moves to my team, basically, who will go ahead and do the preparation and the planning for the project, entering all the milestones, the budget phasing, etc. And we will do all this in the system. It has a full track of who did what, when did they do it in the system, so we have a transactional history. And moving to the last stage, which is the monitoring and of the execution of the project, monitoring the execution of the project. And I would say that this does trigger for us if there is any delay in the life cycle of the project. If there are key projects we have to identify in the system and we have to focus on, we have a fast track for it, etc. And usually this is the typical end user interaction to the system.
So what has changed since adopting Planisware?
Well, a lot has changed. Firstly is probably moving on from all the manual and the Excel files, etc., to our single source of truth, I would say, having a software in place. And then we also have easier visibility to management. We issue automated reports on weekly basis or monthly basis, even capturing key highlights. In addition to that, we have definitely improved our efficiency and accessibility to the information. Usually our senior specialists will have the reports or agreements, for example, stored in the D drive. But for now, we can go and click on the project title. It will take us to all the supported information, and we click on extract the agreement. So it did contribute a lot to efficiency.
Thank you. And hearing this, Ikram, how did the real life usage influence your next steps with ADNOC?
So basically, one of the things that kept coming back after the session that we had is that even though the coverage of the process was very strong, but the interface itself felt a little bit heavy or intimidating for the people who are not in the system on a daily basis. So what we did is we collected those feedbacks, we took them to our core product team, and today we are preparing with ADNOC to roll out the new interface of Planisware. And I would say one thing, there is no system that could enhance without listening to the end users. They are the first line of impact in improving their daily operations, is the first value we put in their pocket, basically.
Yes, you are right. Listening to the customer's needs is the most important thing. And well, for my last question to you, actually it concerns both of you. I'd like to hear about AI. Asma, from ADNOC's perspective, what's your vision for how AI can transform your operations and collaboration with Planisware? And then to you, Ikram, how is Planisware supporting this vision and helping ADNOC bring it to life?
I think I'll start with this, yeah. Planisware and AI. We want AI to enable us to be more efficient, if I would summarize it, be more efficient for a better decision making. Through having conversational interaction with the system. And this is not new to us, ADNOC or Planisware, I believe. We've been discussing with Ikram's team few use cases that we're excited to implement in 2026. I will just give probably a couple of examples. The first one is performance forecasting. We wanted AI to enable us not to do the regular or the known performance management through the system, but we wanted Planisware to enable us to set some scenarios and forecast how best can we elevate our performance by year end. This is just one example. A second one would be AI risk assessment. Basically what we do in ADNOC, we do have a template and we have a systematic risk assessment approach that goes to employees who type or give us their risk assessment views. And then we take the collective results of that. But what we wanted to do, we wanted an AI tool that can go through the historical data, similar projects, in addition, take all the human responses and integrate that into one full risk assessment result. And I think this is gonna strengthen our risk assessment as well. And lastly is the analytical part, which most of the people are excited about, is we wanted to have a full portfolio analytics. For example, if I would go through a chatbot, of course, if I would go to the system and I will ask how many R&Ds have we done in CO2, in CO2 capture, for example, how many R&D agreements, how many R&D projects in Q1 2026, I want the system to be able to answer me on spot with a click of a button instead of navigating through the system. Or if we would ask the system, how much did we spend on sustainability-related technology R&Ds? Or AI, if I want to be too specific, because technology does have different categories. We have core technologies, we have AI, etc. And I think this is the most important one that we're looking at currently. These are only 3 examples of many that we're excited to work on in 2026. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Asma. And I'll make it very short, just kind of throw some examples from Planisware. Since today we are an AI-empowered tool, and it's beyond AI as a buzzword just to have it in our system. We are empowering customers like ADNOC to have smart decision-making and also making sure that they are doing their daily task faster. So one of the features that I like is the predictive analytics. And that's one of the features that Asma's teams are very interested on. And it basically will help them start with the first step of using AI, which is making sure you have the correct data or clean data. If you don't have that, using AI wouldn't really matter. And as I think we already said earlier, between us, data today is the new gold. So I believe one of the first features that needs to be used is the predictive analytics, and then you take it from there. Of course, as all systems today, we do have the chatbots, and it is available for you to have any insights on the project, portfolio, strategy, etc. But there is one feature that I would like to conclude with that it's called data quality audit, but I like to call it the Swiss Army knife, because it's very handy and it's available for every project manager at their project, and basically give them a full overview on what they are not doing right, basically, following the best practices of project management. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
بعدها.
So for the last 5 minutes, I would love to thank you and welcome you to our booth that is located at the entry. And also, we will have a book signing session with Heba Al-Shebi. Thank you. Let's take questions from the audience. Yes? I think I will, please. Loic, maybe you can
Thank you
introduce you.
for this discussion, very insightful. I had a question about adoption, because when we talk about these tools, we realize technology is not the bottleneck anymore. It's more the adoption. So I will be very interested to get the feedback from the panelists here to just go through the life cycle from the moment that you tell some teams we need these data to the moment they are providing it without any follow-up.
Sure. Maybe Asma, you want to answer this question?
I would like to add that in Planisware, we structured the system in order to organize our data first. That was the main intention, organizing the data so we can capture all the data that we want instantly, and we can analyze it further. From my end user perspective, in Planisware, we might receive a request from our management, for example, send us all the agreements or what kind of interaction we did have with company X. In Planisware, it does provide the feature in order for us to go and ask and filter, give us all the collaborations that we have with company X and in what are we collaborating on. So it just print out a report for us of all this collaboration. It depends actually, I would say, on how it's a lot on the users themselves when we build Planisware as well, because as we mentioned earlier, in order to structure it, and for it to understand what data to give you, you need to provide it with the proper data and clean data. For us, that's why we worked on a structured, stage-gated approach instead of having everything into one page. We can dump the information, all of it in one page, but you can structure it as gated. And if you will have categories and then put the data in it, you can extract whatever you want.
But how do you make sure people input this data without any follow-up?
Exactly. Yeah, the system does send notifications to our project managers. For example, we did link each stage to the other. For technology specifically, if I would talk about that since we're working on it, once the agreement is signed, it will send a notification automatically to my team who's managing the whole portfolio, and to the project manager whose name is printed in that agreement, and to their management. It will send them a notification, guys, the agreement has been signed. Here is the copy of the agreement. Please go ahead and input your data to prepare for monitoring and the execution of the project. So do your due diligence, do your homework in preparing the planning stage. Now, the system sends that, but from our from our side, we do try to remind everyone, yes, people will not, there will be some resistance. People who might not update the system on time. That happens, that's the human nature. So we need the system to be able to send notifications whenever. For us, we send notifications to the project manager when the agreement is signed, for example. The system sends auto notification on weekly basis to update some key projects. The system does send notifications on monthly basis as well. And in addition to that, 3 months, for example, before the expiry date or the deadline before the agreement is expired, the system also sends a notification to the project manager confirming that you are on time, or do you require an extension, which is not preferred, of course, but confirming that, hey, your project is going to end in 3 months, keep it, just to raise the red flag for them to complete their work. These are just some interaction. Now, what I want to add that Planisware, you can customize it the way you want. If you want it to send notification, it will go ahead and send notification. If you don't want to, or you want to do it another way, you can customize it as per your preference.
Sure, thank you, Asma. And just to add maybe to your question, basically earlier I mentioned that at the beginning of the implementation, identifying the key focal point was very important. And these key focal points could be also your way of making this a governance. So basically ensuring in the organization itself that this is the processes, we are using this today, and let's go ahead. And for example, if I take another divisions that we worked on in ADNOC, today and just this Monday, we closed the year of 2025 financially, and that was it. That was a deadline, there's a deadline. If they don't input in the system, and the system is their single source of truth, that's it, they don't have their KPIs. I hope we answered your question.
Thank you, Asma, for sharing your experiences with ADNOC. Since ADNOC has implemented a well-established innovation structure, we can take some of your lessons learned. I think most of our companies are stuck in somewhere from where to start, or they already started and reached in the middle with the stuck, where further. As you mentioned also, that focal points is very important. I agree with you. And maybe you have focal points from different departments, different ADNOC entity. So I would like to listen more insights, how you select these focal points, and are these focal points will be changed from time to time, from year to year. And these focal points will be responsible also to communicate internally with their department. And then, let's say to the very bottom level of the employees. And we need to take all this information from the employees. They know better what's going on. And these employees will be working in daily basis. Plus, you are asking them for information to build in your system. They will say, I will do it later. I don't have time. This is too much. I have my own work. Again, I will work for this. Of course, you are facing this. And I know this is happening. So share your lesson learned or how you tackle this. It's not easy, actually.
Yeah, true. I'll stand up probably so everyone can see. Starting with the governance team, before, we don't have random employees. Each one comes up with their own project management. We start with our structure within ADNOC, for example. I'll talk about ADNOC and probably technology specifically. We have our PMO team. We have our project management team who's responsible for the automation of the system. And then we have our technical people. We have technology in upstream and downstream, digital and AI technologies team. So we start with our established structure within the organization. And since we have a PMO that's managing the whole function or the whole technology across ADNOC, we identify, usually the project management team, myself and my team, are leading the system, making sure data are inputted into the system. We identify a focal point who is responsible to do the admin work in the system, which is, again, dealing directly with IKRAM's team and Planisware. And then we have the other side, the users. Usually these are the project managers across EDNOC. So we have a project for each project as globally identified. We have a project manager, we have the team under the project manager, and we have their top management. So all these information are already established and structured and given to the team. This will also help us to have accessibility features. Not everyone, each project manager will have access, and his management will have, or her management will have access to that project that is related to them. So you can also link it. You can control the accessibility features. And first of all, of course, you start with your processes, you start with your governance. This is how we make sure we identify focal points.
So it's better to be based on the projects, not department-wise, project-wise, not department-wise.
Yes. For example, it depends, because as I said, we have upstream, downstream, digital and AI, for example, if I'm talking about our division. These are the, I'd say, semi-functions or departments. Under each one of them, we have multiple project managers dealing with different projects. But who's going to insert the information in the system? It's the people who are actually hands-on or hands-on the job. The project managers are responsible to insert it. I'm not going to share that information or send the notifications to the SVP level or the EVP level or the VP. We're going to send it to the actual person who's handling the project day-to-day basis, because it's their responsibilities to make sure the information is there. And as Ikram mentioned, it's always linked to their KPI. So if they get rewarded, right? If they input the data on time, if they input the full data frequently, it's always linked to their performance at the end.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we can continue our conversation at our booth. It is not because we don't want to answer the questions here, but it is because we respect your time very much. Let's give another applause for Asma Al-Hadabi and Ikram Tanfouri. Thank you.
A big thanks to Asma, Ikram, and Lorinda. Our next speaker is Joe Campa, a seasoned PMO leader with over 20 years of experience in project controls and portfolio management. Joe notably led the PMO for two of Canada's largest clean energy mega projects, earning the prestigious American PMO of the Year 2023 award. As a dedicated advocate for the profession, he served on the PMI Durham Highland board and contributed to the development of several global PMI certificate exams. Please join me to stage Joe.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Can you all hear me okay? Just want to make sure this mic's working well. First off, it is a real pleasure to be here today and be invited, and it's very fitting to be speaking about project management in this city that it's known for its, globally for its ambition, scale, and being able to redefine what is possible. So as I mentioned, or as you heard, my name is Joe Campa. I'm the Senior Manager with Ontario Power Generation, so OPG for short. I work in the Enterprise Project Management Office. And we are the largest clean, low-carbon power generating company in Ontario. And we have a diverse portfolio of nuclear, hydroelectric, solar, natural gas, and biomass. But today I want to talk with you about PMOs, but not in the traditional sense. I don't want to talk about tools and templates and maturity models. What I want to really focus on is how the PMO can evolve from being an administrative function and turning it into a strategic enabler. And with that, what that transformation looks like when you factor in, or when the stakes involve multi-billion-dollar mega projects, national energy security, and also decades-long asset life cycles. So, like many organizations similar to ours, we didn't really start out in the projects world. We were more, our core strength was operational excellence. So we were safely and reliably producing electricity for millions of people within Ontario. But as the world changed, when you factor in now electrification of our transportation sector, when you look at population growth, decarbonization, when you factor in data centers and the amount of power that is required to run those, AI on top of that, it really starts to put a strain on the demand for energy. It's really rapidly accelerating. And so suddenly right now projects are no longer optional. They are existential. And so the question's not whether we do mega projects, it's how do we do them such that we can be setting ourselves up for success? How can we do them with repeatability at hand? And before I bring you to the story of our story from OPG, I want to kind of set the context. We kind of all know about mega projects and the stigma on them failing. There's not really a good track record for mega projects when we talk about delivering on time, on budget, and meeting the intended benefits. And the failure is rarely due to one significant piece. It's not due to engineering alone. Really, what we look at is governance, integration, decision making, and talent readiness. And so I want to kind of start there with our first one here. This is the Brandenburg Airport in Berlin. This one is one of the most cited mega project failures in the modern infrastructure history. And as you can see here, this project was delivered 9 years late and over 160% over the original budget. Again, it wasn't because of a failure of engineering or the lack of technical expertise. Sure, they likely maybe played some parts in it, but really it was around fragmented governance. It was around unclear accountability, disconnected decision making across multiple stakeholders. There was critical systems that were designed in isolation. These are things that could have been prevented when we start to talk about how a centralized PMO can help from a strategic perspective. And this pattern's not unique. Here's another one closer to home for me. This is the 1976 World Olympics in Montreal, Canada. I'm from Toronto, Canada, so just the next province over. Now the games themselves, they happened, but the infrastructure wasn't completed until 10 years after the games had concluded. And not to mention at a whopping 400% over the initial budget. It took the city of Montreal 30 years to pay off that debt. And again, it wasn't about ambition or vision. This is where we're talking about, again, poor governance and labor disputes, unclear scope control, and there was the absence of a centralized, empowered PMO that could align the stakeholders to make timely decisions when it was needed. One more that I'm going to just briefly share with you. This is the Sydney Opera House in Australia. I'm not going to beat this one. If anybody has read the book, How Big Things Get Done, they speak to this one quite frequently. And that is not a typo. This project was over 1,300% over budget and 10 years late. Again, there was a number of different reasons why that is. What I want to focus on, or what I'm trying to share here, is I could have picked any three projects, any three mega projects. There's out of a laundry list of them. Why I chose these is to kind of prove a point. They're all from different countries, they're all from different industries, and they're all from different decades. But the outcomes are the same. We keep repeating the same mistakes. And so, again, it's not about technical incompetence. Instead, focusing on whether the organization is ready, organizational readiness. And that's the challenge that kind of we face at Ontario Power Generation, which brings me to our story. So this is our Darlington nuclear facility. It's just east of Toronto, Canada, and at the time we were facing this challenge of we were already operating reliably and safely for close to 30 years. And what happens with a nuclear power plant is that depending on the design and the technology, this one in particular, about 30 years it reaches midlife and would require a substantial investment to replace a lot of the major components and refurbish the units in order to run the plant safely for another 30 years for producing power. And so that meant we were facing a large-scale nuclear refurbishment, which would be a multi-billion-dollar mega project that involves deep technical work, long durations, and also extreme regulatory scrutiny. The total cost of this project was $12.8 billion to refurbish 4 reactors. So there are 4 reactors in this facility, and to do that over the course of 10 years. Now that is already complex in and of itself, but then at the time, going back 12, 15 years when they were thinking about doing this, the energy landscape was very different. We had a surplus baseload generation. We didn't need additional power. The demand forecast was flat, and then parts of the organization was shrinking. So we have another nuclear facility about a half an hour away that has already been getting closer to its end of commercial life. And so we were looking at decommissioning and shutting that unit down, thus shrinking as an organization. At the time as well, as I mentioned, we were built for operational excellence, and so to undertake something of this nature here, this scale, we were not necessarily set up properly at the time. Our projects across the organization were siloed. Our reporting structures varied from business unit to business unit. Our processes, we had call it a one-size-fits-all approach, whether it was a $500 million project or a $2 million project. We still had the same amount of rigor across all of those types of projects. So scale was not taken into consideration. Project management training wasn't considered a priority at the time. And so a couple other things, the broader industry, we had not looked at supply chain and procurement of these types of components for a generation. So again, another area that there was going to be a significant amount of risk. So we were facing a first-of-a-kind complexity to undertake, and yet failure was not an option for us. The program was tied to provincial energy security, tens of thousands of jobs, and the long-term decarbonization of our electricity system. So rather than focusing on how do we deliver a project, we took the approach of looking at how do we transform the way that our organization governs, plans, and executes work. And we wanted to make sure that what we were doing now was going to be repeatable, so we were successful not just in this refurbishment but future projects. And so that's what really triggered the getting an enterprise centralized EPMO for our organization. And I want to share with you 6 challenges that we faced and how kind of reframing the PMO around those challenges really changed the outcome. So the first one I wanted to share is breaking down silos. So one of the earliest issues that we identified, we didn't lack the information that we had. We had great information through operations, through projects, supply chain, finance, IT. But the problem, what we had, was lacking the integration. As you kind of heard in the previous session, how important integration is. So the data existed, but it lived in different systems, governed by different rules, reported by different dashboards, or in different ways. And so that fragmentation is really what caused or created some blind spots. And so we consolidated some systems. We started to leverage what systems were effective for what we needed for our purposes. And we aligned owners, us and the vendors and our vendor partners around that single source of truth for schedule, for risk, for performance, right? So bringing them into using and leveraging our systems, we ended up using one P6 schedule for the vendors and for us all in one. We didn't have them tracked outside. Risk was the same thing. We started to provide visibility what were the vendors' risks, what were our risks, and who was better to manage them, right? Kind of creating that synergy between us and the vendors. The other thing that I wanted to bring out is contractor alignment, dispute resolution. So given the scale of this program or mega project, we were entering into multi-billion-dollar contracts with multiple vendors. And so the traditional adversarial contracting mindset there would not have worked for us. Instead, we started to build and establish a one-team culture around what a shared definition of success was. We understand that the vendors, their part of their success was, they needed to be profitable. They needed to make sure that the work they were doing was profitable. For us, we needed to get it done on time. We needed to get it done on budget or under budget to ensure the success of the program. There was one of the biggest advantages of what we did here is what we called a best athlete approach. And so how we ended up doing this is taking some of their key subject matter experts that worked within our organization, and we seconded them to the vendors. So they were no longer working for us. They were being paid and receiving direction from the vendors. But these people had the knowledge on how we run things at OPG, what is required, how to navigate some of the complexity and the different departments that work with us. So they were able to help those vendors be successful. So they ended up working with them for a period of up to 2 years to ensure that there was going to be success. Third, organizational learning, knowledge capture. So our first unit out of the 4 that we finished was successful, but I would be reluctant to say that it was efficient. We used up all of the contingency that we had, and we learned a lot of hard lessons from that first unit. But then rather than just moving on, we started to institutionalize that learning. We started to structure a lessons learned process, and we built an entire department that was their sole purpose, was to capture, identify, disposition, and implement lessons learned. On that first unit, there was probably close to 4,000 lessons that were learned, and we implemented a many number of them. But one of the things that really kind of stuck out was an example where one of the, and I don't want to get too much into the technical details, but in a reactor there's some tubes, calandria tubes, and tubes that fit inside of them. We had to remove them from the reactor one by one. First the inner one, chop it up, then take the next one out, chop it up. And what happened was the vendors had identified if we could tweak the tooling and the equipment such that we could do this and run it in parallel, that would save us half the time. It ended up saving 30 days off of critical path per unit, and we still had 3 more units to do. So that's 90 days of savings. And the burn rate for us on critical path was $1 million to $1.5 million a day. So you can imagine the amount of savings that alone would save, not to mention all of the other lessons that were learned. So this was a huge win for us and for the vendor. Strategic alignment, decision making. So what I'm really talking about is decision velocity. So we had layered approvals, excessive escalation, unclear authority, all of which slowed execution. So leadership started to clarify the decision rights, align governance to project risk, and really kind of ensure that these decisions were made at the right level at the right time. So kind of a fit for purpose approach. Just want to make sure that I get through all of these here first. Talent development, this one here is one that I'm probably most passionate about because we realize that the people are our strongest asset, and without them, it doesn't really matter what project you're working on, it will fail. So we recognize that the PMO partnered closely with HR and with the business to build clear development pathways. Not just for project managers, but for project control staff, for engineering, for construction oversight, for commercial disciplines as well, and kind of a roadmap so that it wasn't just linear progression. You could move from one area to the other. to get a whole holistic view and knowledge across the organization and every different department that was touching projects in one way, shape, or form. We also established training programs, certification pathways, like leading towards the PMP, rotational opportunities that I mentioned, so it's not just a linear progression. And we also invested heavily in new grads, because we know that PMI has mentioned, there's other sources mentioning that there is a lack of project talent globally, and how are we going to go and work through that when we're starting to ramp up and we need more project talent. So building this new graduate program was something that needed to be done, and it was a 2-year program. They're permanent staff, but we would rotate them every 6 months into a different business unit for the sole purposes of understanding what we do at OPG, how we do it, and building a network so that you're successful after those 2 years, know where to go. You'll be more efficient, and hopefully it helps with the building attraction and retention. The last one here is decision making, clarity and empowerment, so addressing accountability. So project managers were often constrained by bureaucracy. I'm sure some of you have been in a position where you need 17 approvals to get something done that's in your area of expertise. Well, it was somewhat similar to that, all joking aside. And we had to change that. So we looked at the contingency for the project when we deliberately allocated that to the project managers. We still had transparency, but the authority was now with the project manager, and we were able to still understand where the money was going, how it was being addressed, but the accountability was now with the PMs to give them that flexibility to keep those projects moving forward. And so taking together those 6 themes fundamentally changed how our organization worked. We were no longer a reporting function. We had business unit PMOs that were acting as that for a while. And if you think about it, we became an integrator, an enabler, and a strategic partner to the organization. It was with that shift that ultimately changed our confidence in delivering a multi-billion-dollar mega project like the Darlington program. So where did that land? I've been talking about Darlington refurbishment now for a bit. Short answer is that this program, or this mega project, remains not even on time, but ahead of schedule, under budget. It is due to be completed next month. And what that means, that perspective is a $12.8 billion is going to be completed next month, so under 10 years to do this, and still ended up being on time, on budget. It was really a true success story of what can be done when you have the right approach to the project. What that means, the transformation of our PMO. So what happened was in 2022, our PMO was recognized as a finalist for PMO of the Year Awards through PMI. Funny enough, the winner of that year, I don't know if anybody recalls or has followed that, was Dubai Municipality. So we lucked out. We came in just underneath them. But again, we got that recognition. And then in 2023, we kind of went for it again through PMOGA, and we ended up being recognized as the America's PMO of the Year Award. And with this recognition, it wasn't about the award. It signaled something to leadership, to our government shareholder, and to our vendor partners that we had delivery credibility. We were doing something that was working, and it's hard to disprove that it's not. And so with that credibility comes more opportunity. And so now what we're looking at here is a direct result of the PMO and the success that we've had on our mega project. We are starting to work on a whole other portfolio of major capital programs, including small modular reactors, or SMRs. We are the first in a G7 nation to be building these. So we've already started execution work on that. Pickering nuclear refurbishment, I mentioned we were going to be shrinking that organization. We were going to decommission that unit. the government has now directed us to look at refurbishing Pickering, so we're going to have another one. By the way, this one, just for those of you who like numbers, this one's coming up to about 20 or 21 billion dollars. This one here is going to be about 26 billion. So these are big mega projects. Hydro refurbishment, so we have a large fleet of hydroelectric facilities that are in need of refurbishment. These are units they're areas that they're over 100 years old, these hydroelectric facilities. So they're in a need for refurbishment, new hydro development in the northern part of our province, and then the biggest one, we are planning for large new nuclear capacity to be built right from scratch. And that doesn't happen when if you had a PMO that's not functioning from a strategic perspective. When we look at what we were able to accomplish, it's not just helping Darlington refurbishment, it's the growth of our organization for the next 25, 30 years. And that brings me to the most important part of today, is the key takeaways. So the first one here is that a PMO does not have to be an administrative reporting function. As I kind of mentioned, when you position it correctly, it can be a strategic enabler. When you talk about integrating information, accelerating decision making, developing talent, and aligning execution with strategy, these are some of the key functions that a PMO can do to really start to help enable outcomes for the organization. Second, one of the biggest traps that organizations can fall into is uniqueness bias. So that's where we convince ourselves that our industry, our regulations, our context is so different that no one else's experience applies. But what I think I've kind of shared with you today is that the reality is we talk about silos, we talk about talent, we talk about decision making, slow decision making, alignment. All of these things are not nuclear specific. These are actual universal challenges. So the organizations that are going to succeed are the ones that are willing to learn and adapt and apply those lessons, even from outside of their sector. The last one here, building talent. Sustainable delivery requires a sustained investment in talent. I don't think many people have disagreed with me on that in previous sessions that I've held. And I'm not talking about just project managers, but I'm talking about all of those who are touching projects in one way, shape, or form. It's really the full ecosystem that supports the execution or the delivery. And so with that, if anybody has any questions, we'll save them for afterwards. I want to make sure that we have some time for the third speaker here. But there's a lot of information that you can look up afterwards if you haven't heard of the PMO practice guide and the value framework. We follow that at our company. It has proved to be very, very beneficial. Americo was here in the past few days kind of sharing a little bit about that. You have a MENA PMO global hub to talk to and share information and ideas, and as well as the UNCON. I'll be there facilitating sessions if anybody's interested to join that as well. And if you wanted any more detail of the information that I presented today, PMI and OPG collaborated on a thought leadership white paper that was published a couple months ago. It's on PMI's website, so you'll be able to go into details a little bit more than what I've been able to share with you today. And with that, I thank you, and I'll pass it on to...
Don't forget.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe. Our final presentation for this afternoon session will be featured from John Al-Khatib, a strategic consultant and a researcher specializing in complex project governance and system thinking. With over 2 decades of experience, a focus on adaptive governance, Joe is currently developing a new industry model through his PhD research at the University of Adelaide. Please welcome John.
Good. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
We just finished a complex project which is miking me, putting the mic on The reason was my ears was too big, unfortunately. Thank you so much and welcome. Thank you so much for making the time at this late hour of today. I hope you enjoyed the sessions throughout the day. Before I start, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to the government of Dubai, RTA, my favorite organization in the world, Project Management Institute, and the amazing team who organized this event for having me here. It's always a pleasure to speak and always an honor to be presenting at Dubai International Project Management Forum. In the next 25 minutes, I'll be racing the time, trying to summarize 2 years of research and industry consultation into governance of complex projects. Specifically, I'll be talking about the interconnected relationship between vulnerability and sustainability goals, and how this interconnectedness can actually create tension which can be utilized or used to inform an adaptive sort of governance. I've used the Kwinana industrial area in Perth, Western Australia, just to help us all demonstrate this concept. My name is John Al-Khatib, or Al-Khatib in Arabic. So I come to you from the land of the Ghana people, or what publicly known as the city of Adelaide in South Australia. My contact details are listed on the screen, and this QR code will take you straight away to my LinkedIn profile. If you are keen, as I am, to connect, please feel free to scan this QR code, and I'll be more than happy to connect. I help organizations strengthen their governance of complex projects by applying system thinking, complexity theories, and science, and project management, of course. 5 credentials from PMI, 2 masters, bachelor degree in engineering, multiple credentials. So you please scan this QR code and let's get connected. A quick note about privacy. Some of elements of this presentation today is private to their respected creators. And I also like to acknowledge the partners, industry partners, and organizations who participated in creating this content. And thank you so much for your consideration. This body of work has been presented across multiple avenues and conferences, academic and professional. But today, I'm really thrilled to present to you the latest outcomes of our research, the latest application. So we haven't talked to anyone about what I'm going to present so far. So 15 years ago, I stepped into my first complex project steering committee meeting. Being the project manager I am, I've ticked all the boxes, prepared all the documents, all the reports, all the CPI, SPI, cost performance, etc. But for some reason, that meeting didn't feel right. For some reason, I felt that this steering committee will not be able to really understand what's going on in that project, wouldn't be able to sense those weak signals that comes from the people who are actually being tortured in my project. Besides that, we've been already struggling with many challenges, as you can see on the screen, caused mainly by the decision-making mechanism or project governance. So that moment specifically changed the way I looked at governance moving forward. So to lead this conversation, I've put this agenda together. I'll start with a brief introduction about what is project governance, just to crowd the discussion. What is project governance? What is complexity? What is project complexity? What are we struggling with? And then what is our proposed solution for addressing this problem? And then once I establish that ground, I'll move on to the context. I'll use the Kwinana industrial area just to help us all see how our solution can actually address real-life problem when it comes to governance of complex project. And finally, I've left 5 minutes for discussions and questions. And I'm here in Dubai for quite some time. So if you have any question outside the session, please feel free to reach out at any point of time. I promise you I'll answer all your questions, whether I'm here or away. So what is project governance? That's the widely accepted definition of project governance is what you see on the screen. It's basically, project governance refers to the structures, processes, and relationships that ensure three things. Decisions are made, accountability is maintained or ensured, and strategic alignment is maintained. So three functions of project governance, essential functions for project governance. And if you work in project management, you probably witnessed or experienced some aspect of project governance or some models or structures of project governance. We refer to them as traditional or classical project governance. PMO-centric, a stage gate, which is the most painful one, by the way, portfolio, program, project delivery, Prince, etc. All these models, we call them traditional or classical governance model, project governance model. The key characteristics of these governance models are that the decision-making mechanism is centralized. So they're control-based. They focus on control. They focus on achieving compliance. They focus on achieving compliance with predetermined plan. So we call it the total planning area. You spend a lot of time in planning your project, and you spend a lot of your energy in making sure that this plan actually happens on the ground. So decision-making is centralized. The structure is standardized, control is forced, and risk management is a mix between a proactive and reactive risk management. Reporting is periodic, 3 months, steering committee, another steering committee. Learning, which is the most important aspect in complexity, is retrospective, which means it happens after the problem. You wait until you document your lessons learned, and then you go back and you review your lessons learned, whether through AI or whether through your human activity, etc. But what's the problem when these classical models are applied to complex projects? They're not wrong, but complex projects have specific characteristics, unique characteristics. Complex projects operate under a huge amount of uncertainty. Not uncertainty that is related to lack of planning. Uncertainty, structural uncertainty or ambiguity. You're not able to plan the project in the first place. Multiple stakeholders. So when we talk about the stakeholder context in complex project, you have a very diverse stakeholders and sometimes conflicting stakeholder context. So people don't actually trust each other, but they have to work with each other. Most importantly, the strong interdependence between the different elements in complex project is enormous. And that strong interdependence creates what we call emerging behavior in a project. So connectivity, so that ambiguity or uncertainty, along with the high diversity in that stakeholder context, will create that emerging behavior and dynamic environment. So now if you apply those classical models that are best fit for stable environments, for environments when you can actually plan in advance, to projects that are uncertain, complex, highly dynamic, what happens? What do you see on the screen is just a tip of the iceberg in terms of the challenges and the problems. And I've highlighted a few challenges here on the screen because they are related to our selected case study. Specifically, you look at low dynamic sense making. Low dynamic sense making, limited learning and feedback loops, role ambiguity and overlap, and inconsistent risk oversight, among many, many others. So what's the solution? If we have a classical models and we have a characteristics of complex projects that don't fit those classical models. Before we mention the solution, I also like to highlight a recent report by the Office of Audit from the UK government. The report reviewed the UK most mega projects valued at £834 billion. Among the many recommendations that came out of the report, the most significant one from my perspective was that standard governance doesn't work. So classical governance doesn't work. And governance needs to be adaptive. But how can governance be adaptive? That's easier to say rather than actually do. This is not new to academia, by the way, and research. The research is full of articles and theories that says you have to have a match between the context and the decision-making framework. In other words, you can't make a decision about a problem before you understand the problem in the first place. The Cynefin framework is a very robust and a very known, popular framework that says divide the universe or divide the domain into 4 domains: simple, complicated, complex, and chaotic. In simple words, it says if you apply the wrong methods, decision-making method, to the wrong context, the outcomes will be disastrous. So for example, in simple domain, you can apply best practices. High temperature, we know the tablets. But if you're dealing with a complicated problem or a complex problem using best practices, you will fail. In complex domain, in complex projects or complex domain, there is an essence of experiment. You need to experiment before you sense. You need to do some experiments so you can actually sense what is the problem and sense what is the project. And that's the key aspect of complex projects. So what's the message here? The message here is very simple. Sense-making, perceive, decision-making, proceed, decision-making. You need to understand the context that you're dealing with. Is it complex? Is it complicated? Is it simple? And how? And then you decide the decision framework applied to it. And we must diagnose the level of project complexity before we act. Most importantly, applying the mismatch between the method and the context, the outcome become disastrous. So what's the solution? After 2 years of consultation across defense, infrastructure, IT, health, mining, etc., name them, community service, and reviewing more than 65 case studies, we came with a very important breakthrough. In a world where the project have a level of complexity, that complexity will open the door for emergence. That emergence will create tension on the project level. And if you can sense that tension, you can adjust the governance. So in other words, governance cannot be fit-for-purpose governance cannot rely on templates, on standards. Governance needs to be designed based on a shared assessment of complexity, of project complexity. You need to clearly understand what is complexity, what is the level of complexity of that project. And once you understand that level of complexity, you can understand the emerging behavior of that project and the tension. And if you use that tension, you can adjust your decision-making mechanism. 2 years of work became summarized on this slide. But let's put it into practice. Like, it's very nice on the slide, but let's see how it works in a certain context. So to do this, I've chosen the Kwinana industrial area from Western Australia, Perth, southern Perth. The Kwinana industrial area is the largest industrial area in that side of the world, contributing around 15 billion Australian dollar per annual to Australia GDP. What is most significant about the industrial area, the Kwinana industrial area, is not only the diversity and the maturity of the industrial area, it's also about the sharing of critical resources such as energy, water, materials, waste, and logistics. So organizations operate like a network. They share everything to minimize waste. Imagine how complex this network is. You don't have to imagine, because we've done the drawing for you. This model represents the Kwinana industrial area, a small portion of it, not all of it. Every dot you see on the screen is a company, is a business, is an entity. Every line you see on that screen is a shared resource, whether it's water, whether it's gas, whether it's waste, whether it's whatever, whether it's complaint, it's nagging, it's an email. Now, tell me something, how complex this project is. Any project to improve sustainability within this network is extremely complex. Now imagine a classical traditional governance model. A steering committee meets every 3 months to make decisions about this network. We need 3 months to understand this network. And guess what? This network is dynamic, it's not static. So what will happen in this network? Any disruption at any point of this network will have a cascading events or impact across the whole network. So what starts as a disruption, a minor disruption here, might end up with a bankruptcy at the end. There is no way you can identify cause and effect, and that's the essence of complex project. That's a complex project. Uncertainty, ambiguity, emerging behavior. It's out of your control. It's not a design problem. It's complexity by nature. So vulnerability becomes a very key, important aspect of this scenario. How? When you look at this, when you look at this connectivity, and you look at a project to improve sustainability in this network, let's say you want to improve some sort of sharing resources across this node. That will automatically increase vulnerability, and vulnerability is defined as sensitivity. So when you improve efficiency, you improve sensitivity, and the cascading event becomes even bigger. How? Look at a small node here. That's a small aspect of the network. Just NICO West, connected to multiple organizations. Multiple organizations with the NICO West. NICO West, if NICO West want to improve their efficiency in sharing resources, it will impact everyone else in the network. But we'll come back to it in a sec. So this will give you a clear idea about how complex this project is. I don't really care how you assess complexity, to be honest. So if you want to assess complexity, you don't have to use this model. You can use a simple model, PMI, complexity assessment, ICCPM, complexity assessment, the one that you see on the screen. So this is from the International Center of Complex Project Management, which is one of the supporters for this research and this body of work. You can see on the radar map how complex this project is, from structural, social, political, technical, temporal, directional, etc. What is really important here is for us as a project team to understand how complex this is and where the source of complexity is coming. Because without that understanding of complexity, your decision-making mechanism will be ineffective, not informed. So as I said, if you try to increase efficiency in this project, vulnerabilities or sensitivity will not stay local in that company. It will spread across the network. And that's not a mismanagement, poor management. That is a structural vulnerability. And that's the essence of complex project. So the more efficient the network, the more vulnerable it becomes to emergence. Make sense? The more you try to make the network more efficient and more productive and you improve performance, the more sensitive it becomes to emergence. Any disruption, 1 + 1 = 9 here. And vulnerability is not a failure. This is extremely important. Vulnerability is different than risk. Risk is systematic. Vulnerability is systemic. It's about whole of system understanding. And it's not a problem. Vulnerability is not a failure. It's where project becomes sensitive to its own structure. It's part of the game, and we have to deal with it. But what is important here is, after understanding complexity, what should we do with it? So our research suggests that once you understand complexity, you need to identify the tension forces that are caused by this complexity. And that's our breakthrough research. How? When you look at NICO West, the main vulnerability in NICO West is centrality. Centrality. It sits in the middle, controls everything connected to it. That's the main vulnerability, not risk, vulnerability, sensitivity. And that sensitivity will force this company to struggle between two competing forces: reliability and responsiveness. Think about it this way. You are responsible for all these companies connected to you, and you are required to be reliable. Commitment, you're sharing resources. But at the same time, you are responsible for reacting to external problems. You have to be responsive. And if you were sitting in NICO West here, you will find yourself in an infinity loop, dynamically moving between responsiveness and reliability, continuously evolving. And that signal can help you make decisions if you can measure that signal. How can you measure that signal? You need to identify what we call them tension signals. So your tension signals, which are based on your understanding of complexity, will help you adjust your decision-making mechanism. In this, you might come up with different tension. That's completely fine. This is something just I came up with to help us in today's session. But you might decide, you might say, a different tension can act or can respond to this complexity, like autonomy and integration, accountability, blah, blah, blah. We actually identified 37 different types of tensions in our research. So the tension signal that can tell the decision-making mechanism governance that we are doing too much responsiveness are here. Rising downstream complaints, emergency coordination, ad hoc fixes. And the tension signals that tells you that you are too much reliable and you need to lose it a little bit and be more responsive are escalating delays, workaround, pressure bypass, governance, etc. So any governance mechanism needs to be able to navigate between those two paradoxes. I'll give you an example. You might establish your project governance leaning towards responsiveness because it's the beginning of the project. You need to be, you need to meet all these regulations and all these standards. But something might happen in the middle of the project, increased costs, material flows, bankruptcy, COVID-19, etc., and might shift your decision-making mechanism to be more reliable. You need to meet commitments now. The trick is you need to be able to come back. So your balance point, you need to have a mechanism that sends you back to your balance point. And that's what we call them tension signal. That's what we're missing in our projects. So our governance designed based on a robust complexity assessment will help us identify the tension forces caused by that complexity. And if we manage to monitor that tension and feedback the decision-making mechanism, we can adjust our approach in our projects. For academia and for publications, we came up with this nice model, visual. So you can see that this model consists of 4 layers: the complexity diagnostic layer, the tension diagnostic layer, the strategic diagnostic layer, just to make sure that we are heading in the right direction, because you can be efficient and misaligned. And most importantly, your learning. Learning has to be real-time and dynamic. And that sensing of tension is extremely important in facilitating that learning. If you attended the interview with His Excellency today morning, he said, we don't use surveys in understanding what people need. We use social media. He's measuring tension. Amar is measuring tension through monitoring social media, real-time monitoring and adjustment of the decision-making. That's what we're talking about here. That's exactly what we're talking about here. But you used social media, we're using more structured approach and more private approach. So what are the recommendations? What are we doing now? What are we doing in 2026 besides speaking to people about it? We want to promote complexity assessment or complexity as a dynamic force in any project. We want to advocate for proper complexity assessment because unfortunately over the last 2 years, we rarely witnessed any project actually assessing complexity in a clear way. It's more about having a conversation behind closed door and say how complex this project is. It's complex. That's a shortcut to nowhere. I call it a shortcut to nowhere if you call something complex. We want to develop a complexity-sensitive feedback and governance agility around thresholds and adjust project dashboards to show movements and strains, not CPI and SPI. I don't care about your cost performance index and schedule performance index and earned value management. No, I can summarize them for you by heart. I want to hear weak signals. What is torturing the project? What's just straining the project, pulling the project into different directions so I can adjust my decision-making mechanism? In terms of tension, our recommendations are to operationalize tension measurement, qualitative and quantitative. Not only numbers, but all speeches, words, talks. I want to explore AI and data analytics because we have, not because I'm a big fan of AI, because AI has a massive opportunity for processing large quantity of operations, of data, which can be useful. I want to collaborate and expand my work with the many sectors because in complexity, no one knows everything by nature. We need everyone's opinion when managing complex projects. And identify and interpret the most relevant tension forces, which can be different depending on your preference and your project and your context and your strategy, etc. That's the beauty about it. And most importantly, develop practitioner toolkit, because management sometimes can be about templates, and people understand templates more than they understand concepts. So we're working on a toolkit for governance of complex projects. If you would like to join this conversation, please scan this QR code and I will be in contact. In the meantime, I'm really thankful for your time today and staying until this late hour. I hope you enjoyed what I just exported from my conscious. I'm more than happy to answer any question at any point of time. Now, after, when I go back to my homeland. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
If anybody have a question and want to ask a question, we have time.
Did you enjoy the
For
presentation?
Mr. Joe and John, both of them. Mr. Joe?
Hi, John. Thank you for a very detailed presentation.
You're welcome. Anytime.
I have a question that is human related. You showed a lot of tension points on your presentation, but I was wondering, in the example that you presented, what was the most impactful tension point that was human related, not the system or the structure?
The quick answer, every single tension point is human related. Any tension that we identified in our research is a human related, because all the decisions, all the processes are implemented by humans. So when we talk about responsiveness, reliability, we talk about executives, we talk about decision makers, really struggling, stretching between two forces. I have a standard for A and B and C that I need to meet, but at the same time, I have a company connected to me that I need to be reliable to it. And I need to engage, they need to engage not only their network, but extended network, like the government, like the funding party, because what's happening now is, and that's the extended part of the problem. What's happening now is that the government will come to you and throw you a contract. And that contract will be interpreted using their language, not your language. And you will engage with subcontractors, you will engage with other companies. And the whole governance structure will be incompatible because the initiation phase did not take into account all of this, all what we're talking about. So everything is related to human in this tension. We call them weak signals.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, we should separate risks that can happen on the project from the tension? Or
we should separate vulnerabilities from risk. Risk is fine. I know I'm not going to interfere in your risk management process. What I really care about is understanding vulnerability and connecting vulnerability to complexity. Because vulnerability comes from complexity in my brain. One source of vulnerability, at least. Thank you so much for the question.
But I'm sure we can link vulnerability to risks. Like each vulnerability would have many different risks related to it.
You can link anything to anything. But what is important is how you manage those things. Managing risk is completely different than managing vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities is a system-wide sensitivity, which means it needs understanding, it needs conversation. Your understanding of vulnerability is completely different than my understanding of vulnerability for the same thing. Where in risk, we're talking about structured risk, we're talking about budget, we're talking about scope, we're talking about time, schedule, etc. But when it comes to vulnerability, if you go back to this diagram, if you go back to the network diagram, you might identify certain vulnerabilities that's completely different than my vulnerability because it is cognitive analysis. It's basically based on your interpretation and how actually mature we are in analyzing networks. Unfortunately, I have very limited time. But if I had more time, I would bring more networks to you. And I'll usually ask people to identify certain vulnerabilities. Looking at that diagram, network, and identify certain vulnerabilities, I never get the same answer from two people. Never. Because especially in social work, when you ask yourself, what is the source of poverty? Try to draw it. What is the source of poverty? Million reasons. Probably none of us will agree on a single reason. So vulnerability and risk can be connected, but they shouldn't be managed the same way. Thanks for the
Amazing.
question.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Please, feel free. Did you enjoy the session? Did you? Good. Thank you. That's the most important thing. Because it's 6 o'clock in the evening, day one, so I feel like I'm obligated to entertain you at some level. So thank you so much for making the time. Any other question for Joe about the PMO and the excellent presentation he delivered? All clear?
I took about 3 questions.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, good people. Really enjoy the rest of your evening and appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, everyone, for attending this session. Just a reminder, tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. sharp, we're going to start our sessions. And thank you all. Thank you, the speakers. Thank you for the attendees. See you tomorrow.